Hey everybody, this is Silver Spook, and this is the Silver Spook video, which is about Moana 2, why we don't need it, from a Native Hawaiian perspective, and mine specifically as a Native Hawaiian. So I'm gonna try to keep this as succinct as possible. Um, just try to get to the point. I'm gonna be more direct in this video because I, have a well. I mean, it's kind of in the image there. We have a lot of problems. We have a lot of things we need done in Hawaii. We have a history as Native Hawaiians that I sometimes talk about, more directly, and sometimes, not. But today we're gonna be addressing it more head on, because there's a lot of press for this movie right now. Dwayne Johnson's posting about it. It's number one. Disney, currently it's being pushed around in all the trailers and all the online content locations. Like, everybody's seeing it, and so I want to push back. I guess that's a very nice way to say push back. I'm gonna try my best to be diplomatic, but it can be difficult at times because of the problems that we have in Hawaii. I think it's somewhat obvious from the picture, but in case you don't know, the United States has not been. It's been a real big problem for us as Native Hawaiians. Disney itself as a major part of the U.S. in so many ways, in the U.S. and its imperialism. And I made a video about this about a year ago when there was talk of Moana 2 and live action Moana, live action Lilo and Stitch, and a lot of Disney made Hawaii movies, or Disney produced movies about Hawaii, about the Pacific generally. And anyways, okay, let's just go through it. Okay, why we don't need Moana 2. I want to make sure I get through all the important points. Okay, so I have a whole thread here about why. Okay. But most plainly, as a Native Hawaiian, what I'd like most of all, right? And of course, I'm one Native Hawaiian. I'm sure other Native Hawaiians have different perspectives. Auli'i Carvalho is one of the voice actors in Moana too, so she might have a different perspective. But I mean, as a Native Hawaiian, in reality, the Native Hawaiian, as Native Hawaiians collectively, we have strong problems. We have strong feelings against what the U.S. has done in its colonialism, its suppression of our native rights, etc. So I'm not the only Native Hawaiian that feels this. Okay, but as a Native Hawaiian, I would like Disney to stop displacing us homeless Hawaiians with a $144 million resort for rich foreigners, in collaboration with the illegal U.S. occupation that overthrew us and stole our land. Dwayne Johnson also profited off our suffering in Lahaina directly. So in case you didn't know that, Dwayne Johnson, along with Oprah Winfrey, opened up a fundraising for support of Native Hawaiians, and was raising money for Hawaiians, but a lot of that money mysteriously disappeared. Dwayne Johnson directly collaborates with the United States military, which is one of the biggest forces of destruction for us in Hawaii in just so many ways. I mean, Dwayne Johnson specifically, Disney as a corporation has just so many horrible problems. And then the U.S. imperialism, colonialism, generally, the U.S. as the number one perpetrator of that. So there's just so many ways that this is a problem. But one of the most direct ways is that, Disney, and this is one of Dwayne's tweets. This is one of Dwayne's tweets. Ocean is calling her back. Experience new trailer for Disney's Moana 2 tomorrow, and this is from a few days ago. And this is the reality in Hawaii. Okay, so I mean, if you follow my videos, you might already know this. If you follow my social media, you might already know this. But in case you don't, okay, this is what Hawaii actually looks like. The Hawaii that I'm from, which is the reality of most Hawaiians that we actually experience, that most tourists that come to Hawaii don't experience, that most people who watch Disney movies and Moana, Lilo and Stitch don't experience. And there's a good reason for that, right? But in case you didn't know, since the U.S. invaded our sovereign country of Hawaii in the 1890s, and then all the way up to the present, Hawaii tops the U.S. in police killings, disproportionately Pacific Islanders. Hawaii is number one by far, the most economically unequal state in the U.S., worse than L.A., New York, and D.C. by a long shot. Okay, so the economic inequality is by far the worst, and Native Hawaiians experience the biggest brunt of that. 1/4 of us, we're the highest homeless rate. We have the highest homeless rate. We're 4 times more likely to be homeless, right? The U.S. School to prison pipeline, so we're talking about children being rounded up in schools by the police, is number 1 in Hawaii. Hawaii has the highest rate of children going straight to prison, and it's Native Hawaiians that are targeted. Okay, so the same way that the inequality of black people in the United States, indigenous people, it's like that, but even worse in Hawaii. Due to the United States and companies like Disney that work with the United States colonial capitalist occupation. Part of the continued U.S. attempt to destroy our native people and lifeways, the U.S. banned our Hawaiian language. Okay, in case you didn't know that, the U.S. made it illegal to speak Hawaiian. When I was born, it was illegal to speak Hawaiian. And nearly extinguished Hawaiian. Less than 100 children in Hawaii spoke Hawaiian language in the 80s. And today, children are still punished for speaking Hawaiian under the U.S. occupation. And my mother's hands were broken for speaking Hawaiian in school. Okay? And Disney collaborates with all of that. We're going to get to this. Okay, Disney makes billions of dollars selling our culture, building resorts over our stolen land, on our ancestral graves, and displacing us, right? In the same way that Israel displaces Palestine, the U.S. and Disney make mega profits displacing us in Hawaii. Native Hawaiians and Pacific Islanders we have the highest rates of incarceration in the U.S. It's four times the white population. Just as an example, the black population, the U.S. has the highest prison population in the world, right? And the black percentage or per capita, so like the number of black people in the United States compared to the number in prison is like 2.5 times. You're 2.5 times more likely to go to prison if you're a black person. If you're Hawaiian, you're 4 times more likely to go to prison. So like the number 1 ethnically targeted people is Native Hawaiians, like myself. I mean, there's a good reason. It's the same reason why, Joe Biden is doing the GENOCIDE, right? In PALESTINE. Why is he doing that? To steal land, to make money, and for a giant military outpost to subjugate the entire planet under a global colonial capitalist system for global billionaires and oligarchs in DC and Wall Street, right? So for all those reasons, now, okay, there's a lot to understand in geopolitics to get all of that, but I mean, I don't have time to explain all of that right now. I'm focusing on why this doesn't help. Why we don't, as Native Hawaiians, we don't need a Moana, right? Now let's come back to this. So, and if you really want my direct opinions on that, this is a thread on Twitter. I'm most active on Twitter, so that's why I'm just giving you. I want to get the core information I want to get out there. So this is more on the U.S. illegal occupation of Hawaii, ban on our language and culture, stealing of our land, and destruction of our prosperous, advanced country in the 1890s to turn us into a slave pineapple colony. Okay. Actually, I might as well just go through this right now to get all the history out there. Because I'm not sure exactly where everybody will be coming from with this. Watch this speech by Hanani K. Trask. In fact, I'll just play this speech. So this is the actual Hawaiian perspective. This is the Hawaiian perspective. When we are not mincing words and not self-censoring, because the United States has completely captured our entire economy, and most of us have to work for the U.S. corporations, government, and military.
Better. We are not American. We are not American. We are not American. We are not American. Say it in your heart. Say it when you sleep. We are not American. We will die as Hawaiians. We will never be Americans. The Americans, my people, are our enemies, and you must understand that. They are our enemies. They took our land. They imprisoned our queen. They banned our language. They forcibly made us a colony of the United States. America always says they are democratic. Lies! That is a lie! They have never been democratic with Native people. They have never been democratic with Indians. They have never been democratic with Hawaiians. The United States of America is the most powerful imperialist country in the world. In the world. They control the United Nations. They control the Pacific Ocean. All these nuclear submarines circulating throughout the Pacific. The United States of America is a death country. It gives death to Native people. And the only way to fight the United States of America is to be political. Coup-eh! 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 Fight! Fight! Fight!
Anyway, so this is from 1994. Okay, but this still applies today. It's actually worse today. Yeah. So let's just go through some of this. Okay, so I kind of went through a quick rundown, but let's just look at what the situation is like in Hawaii. So Hawaii is a Disneyland-like resort, literally built by Disney in many places, like Disney Aulani. Okay, so Disney Aulani is that $144 million resort that I was talking about. It makes tons of money for Disney. I mean, and other, U.S. and global capitalist exploiters of our islands, right? So this is a huge mega resort built over our stolen native land. None of this helps Hawaiians, by the way. None of this really helps Hawaiians. It only further displaces us and makes us homeless. We're already the most homeless population, and none of this is benefiting us at all whatsoever. All of it. This is like saying that if ISRAEL, right, built a hotel in GAZA, right, if they built a hotel there, that would help out the PALESTINE people, right? But the reality is that's not gonna help anything, right? That they're having arguments that that's really gonna help them out. It's really after they've been displaced under apartheid and bombed and crushed and starved. But if we build this hotel, you'll be able to work in you have some $7 an hour or $3 an hour, PALESTINE people working in a ISRAEL hotel, right? That's the equivalent, right? It's basically in PALESTINE it's worse, right? It's worse in our pal's place, but it's basically the same. Okay, so that and Disney is of course directly supporting the on the BDS list. Disney is already on. It's been on there for a long time. There's so many reasons why their company is guilty of genocide and PALESTINE, and it's the same, they're doing the same thing in Hawaii. Okay, so Hawaii is a Disneyland-like resort with literal Disneyland resorts built over our indigenous communities and ancestors' graves, where we are made to do bastardizations of sacred dances and sexy feather headdresses and entertain rich tourists for starvation wages 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, drinking jet fuel poisoned water. The illegal U.S. occupation of Hawaii results in mass sexual exploitation. Hawaii has one of the highest rates of missing persons, most commonly a 15-year-old Native Hawaiian girl. There's like studies that you can read on that have been done by multiple agencies in Hawaii. The U.S. military poisoned our water with the spill of hundreds of thousands in over the years and tens of thousands of gallons of jet fuel into our largest sole source aquifer. And then the United States left us to fend for ourselves. They said our water was safe and unaffected. For years and decades, they said it was. It's not. In the beginning, they told us our water was not on Navy water lines, and this is from a specific incident like a few years ago, where over 100,000 people were impacted and thousands were hospitalized, including many Native Hawaiians like myself. Many of us trusted that and continue to use the water. We continue to get poisoned and get sick. This is one of the Hawaiian kids who was hospitalized with rashes all over his body. He went into a coma because the U.S. military spilled jet fuel into our water supply and lied about it continuously. I already showed that. Okay, who owns Hawaii? Okay, all the richest, most powerful people on the planet Earth. Hawaii is the highest concentration of billionaire ownership in the world. Why is that? Because of the United States occupation. Okay, so Jeff Bezos bought a giant multi-tens of millions of dollar mansion about a year ago. The richest men on earth own most of Hawaii, while most of us don't own a single acre of our U.S. illegally occupied home that has not yet been bombed into a toxic waste dump by the U.S. military. They're currently bombing all over Hawaii right now. The RIMPAC operation, which is every 2 years, is the world's largest military exercise. They destroy an entire battleship and they sink it into our ocean. Hawaii already has the world's highest per capita of any U.S. state. Hawaii's not even a real state, but we'll get to that. Hawaii has the highest per capita and per acre U.S. military base festering, I would say. And so the toxic and every 2 years they bomb all over Hawaii. They're bombing on this island. They're bombing right now. There's helicopters every day flying over us. Our kids are worried, like a helicopter or a plane, like, because we've seen there was an F-35 that recently crashed moments after taking off in the middle of the U.S. Continent, right? And our kids are like worried that what if one of these military planes drops something on top of us or crashes. The reality is the U.S. Military does do that. It crashes planes. It drops things from its helicopters, like in Okinawa, where it endangers the lives of children there, where the U.S. occupation of the indigenous Okinawa people's land drops like giant 10-meter panes of glass that smashes into the schoolyards near the playground. And so the U.S. and that's just one way. And also U.S. destroys the land, poisons the water. It has radioactive waste all over multiple of our islands, where Hawaiian activists have gone and our hair falls out, and we become like emaciated and our skin turns like pale white because just by protesting, because of the level of toxicity the U.S. has leveled and poisoned us with. The U.S. is currently trying to build 7 new military telescopes, which is military weapons, on Haleakala. They're trying to force that through right now. Every day, the United States is increasing its destruction of our land, and the richest people on the planet, Mark Zuckerberg, Larry Ellison, Elon, everybody you can imagine, they're all building bunkers here. They're building resorts here. They're just destroying everything and turning it into their little playground. Hawaii's always been the planetary imperialist playground. And that to the detriment and the suffering of our people, because you have the richest people and the most homeless people, right? You have the richest people and the most impoverished people whose children are all being thrown in prison, right? Hawaii is the best kept secret America has ever had, I would argue. The Hawaiian model is the model for global U.S. empire. The Mickey Mouse happy vacation land, Disneyland as theme parks in general. The Hawaii model was part of the rollout of the model for uh, Israel, right? It's a place you can come and have a great time and have a good have a really nice time with really nice beaches and have a lot of parties, right? For the settler colonialism in Israel, and Hawaii was the model for that. Hawaii is the model for the friendly face of global colonialism, which is to say global evil. And so and the richest people in the world continue to benefit from that. And also PFAS fills our water, and it costs $6. It's like $10 a gallon in Hawaii. Hawaii has the highest prices by far, by far of any U.S. state. Okay, the average like milk is like $7 to $10 or more. The gas prices have never got like they're like $5 to get to $6-7. The price of electricity is 49 cents a kilowatt hour. It's literally 3 times that of much of the so-called United States. Why is that? It's not because it has to be. Hawaii had the cheapest electricity in the world. It was free in the 1800s. It's because the United States is intentionally trying to destroy Native Hawaiians, indigenous people like myself, and maintain a forward operating base for the U.S. military and have a playground for rich white billionaires. That's literally what Hawaii is, okay? So in case you're confused, the U.S. occupied Hawaii is living starting Pack 22 in an apartment next to meth labs, paying $3,000 a month, getting raped by Americans in tacky hotels, especially U.S. soldiers, and then being arrested for speaking your own language, dying in prison or of diabetes at the age of 39. So this is what Hawaii is actually like for Native Hawaiians, most Native Hawaiians. There's a handful of Native Hawaiians like Disney's actress, Carvalho, and maybe Dwayne Johnson is Samoan, but he lived in Hawaii for a bit. There are some Hawaiians doing okay that are compromised, that are working with the United States against their own people. A lot of them are the police, and a lot of them are in the military. But outside of that, the average Hawaiian experience is to be homeless, is to live on the street. As I said, we have the highest homeless population. Is to be extremely at the poverty line or below it, even more so than, by far more so than the average American, and even the average Black American. Hawaiians have the highest, you name it, Hawaiians are worse in every possible category, and Pacific Islanders generally. But in Hawaii, it's particularly egregious because it is our homeland. So, and the U.S. does its best to hide this, but this is the reality still in Hawaii. This is a Native Hawaiian, Kaleko Kaio, who was arrested for speaking Hawaiian in a court of law in Maui. He is a professor of Hawaiian language. He was arrested for speaking Hawaiian. So as I said, it's still illegal. It's technically, officially not, but Hawaiian language is still highly suppressed and oppressed. And the United States will still use its courts, it will use its schools to beat up on Hawaiians who speak Hawaiian language. Okay? So, and Disney is complicit. Disney makes millions of dollars working with the U.S. military, supports the U.S. military occupation here on our stolen land. So Disney has not done a single ounce of anything for Hawaiians. All the money that Disney's going to make from this Moana is not going to come back to us at all. A handful of Pacific Islanders like Dwayne Johnson is going to get paid off for being good little Obama tools of empire. Like, Obama is a black guy. What has he done for black people? Right? Black people actually got poorer and more incarcerated under him. Right? So a handful of people, and Disney's going to put out, again, this is the Western model now, is to pretend like, it's the liberal model. They're going to put out all kind of, press, and I'm sure there's going to be lots of tours with a handful of the actors in Moana are going to go and talk about how a great experience it was, and we're so glad we have representation. But representation, as I pointed out, representation within the empire that glosses over and is PR for the ongoing much grander crimes, right, is not worth that representation. Like, just representation is better, is just in general is nice to see people who look like you, and that's great and all. But representation that, like, Obama was representation, did that materially help black people and in the planet generally? Did the planet become a more equal, not racist place? Did the United States become a better place? because of Obama? Did the African and non-white people around the world benefit from Obama, or did he actually drone bomb 10 times more than the white president before him, George W. Bush? Right? The answer is it didn't become better. In case you're confused about that. Okay, so we don't need representation in the United States empire. Or some people might disagree with what I'm saying. They can disagree with that, and but I will say most of those people are scared, and because they don't want to lose their jobs, and they don't want to lose their jobs in the U.S. military, committing genocide in Afghanistan, in Iraq, and obviously in Palestine, which the United States is complicit in. So they're scared. There are Hawaiians who are scared to talk about that, but it's for a bad reason. Now, again, I understand that it's difficult to survive in the United States and its colony Hawaii, but that doesn't make that without working for the police, the military, and being complicit in empire and this horrible evil of colonialism and neocolonialism. But that doesn't make it right either. So that's why I have to say this. This little girl's teacher told her not. So specifically, this has not been resolved. There's a video, and there's a link that Holly will be posting in the chat here. This little girl was going to school in Oahu, Hawaii, to a public school in Hawaii. The teacher brought her in the classroom. The teacher brought her. The teacher, while she was in class, and she was not interrupting class. This girl was just quietly counting to herself in Hawaiian, like very, very quietly. The teacher, right, and the United States intentionally hires racist teachers to teach in Hawaii, by the way. It's by design. And historically even said we need to hire the worst teachers to teach in Hawaii because we don't want an educated Native Hawaiian population. We don't want an educated masses. They literally explicitly said that. And but this teacher punished this child for speaking Hawaiian in class. Said you have to, if you're going to speak Hawaiian, not speaking Hawaiian specifically. And if you're going to speak Hawaiian, you have to leave the classroom until you stop speaking Hawaiian, because this is English only. You're in America now. You speak English only. Hawaiian is not a useful language. Hawaiian is not the language of power. English is the important language you need to learn. You need to stop speaking Hawaiian. So this is a public school teacher, because the United States accuses countries, right, like China, of suppressing language, right, and forced assimilation, right. The United States is literally punishing children. This has never been resolved, by the way. This has never been resolved. The teacher still has a job. The superintendent of the schools, the Department of Education, the state of Hawaii, nothing has happened to them. The United States, my sister used to teach Hawaiian. The United States forcefully defunded her school. She lost her job. The United States is actively trying to eradicate Hawaiian language. Disney is part of eradicating Hawaiian language by extension. Okay? So while Disney is selling Moana, they are literally wiping Hawaiians off of the map. While Disney is, look at this nice Hawaiian girl. Look at this beautiful Hawaiian girl that we have on the screen for you, right? Disney is actively displacing Hawaiians, making them homeless, forcing them out of their land. Part of the burning of all of our communities like Lahaina, Disney is wiping out Hawaiian language. Disney is wiping out Hawaiian language when it's purporting to be but this is the United States model, though. This is just the United States model, right? Which is to destroy indigenous people, give death to native people, appropriate and steal their dream catchers, their headdresses like Native Americans, steal all of their tokens, right? Like just like ISRAELIS, right, are wearing dream catchers, they're wearing Native American clothing, right, while they're having a white wedding on PALESTINE. There's a picture of all the rubble in GAZA that people are seeing, and then in front of that there is a ISRAEL and his partner, and he's proposing to her, right, and he's proposing to her under a dream catcher, right. So this is the strategy, right. It is to steal all the native people's culture, just mix it all up however you feel like it, make billions of dollars selling movies, selling entertainment, making up fake narratives about Pocahontas, right? Making money from that, making up, just hodgepodging together all the Pacific Islanders culture, getting a handful of sellout imperialist collaborators who care about their own money and their own success, like Dwayne Johnson, more than they care about Samoan people, more than they care about Native Hawaiian people. You know, getting people who are willing to sell their own people out for billions and millions and fame. Make a bunch of movies, sell that to your own racist, capitalist, colonial masses in America and Canada, and to all your liberal and conservative people who are all complicit in global colonialism, capitalism, and genocide. And then simultaneously keep displacing the native people that you stole the culture from and the land from. Okay, so it's not like an accidental thing. This movie is by design of modern U.S., neoliberal era imperial power, imperial plunder, and imperial control. Whenever Disney and the U.S. and Hollywood is a weapon, right? Hollywood is a global soft power consent manufacturing geopolitical tool of empire, right? It explicitly says that in a document called Ayn Rand's Motion Picture Association for the Preservation of American Values Screen Guide, right? It was written by the premier anti-communist during the Cold War, Ayn Rand, and it outlines how exactly to maintain that tactic, and it's just one of many facets of how Hollywood is a weapon, and all Western media, including their entertainment, not just the news, is a weapon, and especially Disney. It's a long historical collaboration from solidifying the U.S. military's and U.S. imperial image through things like Donald Duck, who was a Navy sailor, the Mickey Mouse ears, which along with the McDonald's arches solidified global U.S. hegemonic control for its own colonial capitalist empire. And so when Disney makes a movie about your culture, right? This I mean, many people will respond initially positively because, especially white people, they'll say, well, now we're having a nice representation and we're learning about those people, and it's so great we get to see those people in our movies, and many people will feel represented, and like that I'm not saying that's bad for people to feel represented in their movies and TV shows and games, and that's fine and all, but in the same way that, like, if a billionaire in the United States build a school in Africa, that's great. I'm sure a lot of kids will go to school. When Bill Gates builds a school in Africa, when a nonprofit, right? When Lockheed Martin donates some money to rebuild some homes, in a Arab country or an African country, that's great. That's really great. But their entire business model is based upon selling weapons to destroy Arab, African, and Asian entire countries with their bombs, right? So it's the same as Disney. Like Disney making a movie about Native Hawaiians or with Native Hawaiians and Native Pacific Islanders is like Lockheed Martin donating 0.1% of their money to make to rebuild a house they blew up, right? Disney is part of destroying and erasing Hawaiians off the earth, right? So if you make a movie, also this is all cultural appropriation, all of it, right? And where is all the money? People talk about cultural appropriation, like all of this is culture. This is all pure cultural appropriation. All the people that are like ultimately making the big money from Disney, they're virtually all white. Anthony Mackie even said like 98% of all the people that are like in the back, in the parties, in the after parties, the writers, the directors, the producers, the editors, the shot callers, the people who decide what goes in the movie, and the people who actually profit from the most significantly all the Hollywood movies he's ever been in, virtually all, with very few exceptions, and especially all the Disney movies, when he's been in several, all the Marvel movies, it's all white men, or white people and white men usually. So this is just profiteering off of Native Hawaiian culture, and we don't need that. We don't need that. It's profiteering, and it's solidifying imperial control, and we don't need this. Also, it's just a mishmash of a bunch of native. It's like a white liberal from New York just smashed together a bunch of random Pacific Island cultures. When I watched Moana, and I watched Moana 2, and also, it's like it's focusing on a very specific mythological past. It's focusing specifically on a version of the Pacific from the legends, and like obviously, like, a lot of Disney movies focus on older myths and legends, but in my opinion, like, we don't need that right now, and we don't need global imperial Hollywood moguls like Bob Iger, right? Also on the BDS list, also complicit in GENOCIDE, among many other things, right? Remember the Screen Actors Guild and the Writers Guild, the WJ and the SAG-AFTRA strikes, right? I mean, it was almost the end of acting and writing and film as we knew it, and it was just all going to be replaced by AI. If it wasn't for the unionized actors and writers striking last year, we could be in a very bad place. And that was led by the Disney CEOs, the Disney executives. They want to just eradicate the entire practice of the entire arts of filmmaking. Now, I don't know if they would have succeeded, but that's what they wanted to do, was to have no actors ever act ever again and get $100 for their motion capture and 3D scanning of their likeness. So, I mean, that's a whole another sidebar we could go into, but I'm trying to focus on the point. So, giant capitalist companies should not exist at all. If you want my opinion on that, giant capitalist corporations that are non-democratic structures that also are doing massive cultural appropriation and the work of imperialism, and trying to fold and brainwash Hawaiians to be part of the U.S. empire that they shouldn't. That's just an additional horror, right? But really, all the actors and writers should own the means of their writing and their acting and their storytelling, and not a bunch of billionaires who work with GENOCIDE, Geno something countries like the U.S. and the U.S. military. And anyway, so you can see how there's so many ways that it's horrible, and we don't need it. And also, Americans don't need to be distracted anymore, and this is just a distraction. Americans have work to do. If you need a distraction, I mean, what you can do is why don't you watch like an indigenous Native Hawaiians show? Like, I'll give you one example, okay? Why don't you watch an actual Native Hawaiians movie like Hi Hawaii? This is just one, or you can watch Hananike Trash videos. If you want something if you want to watch an entertaining movie, okay, you can watch Hi Hawaii. Right, it's actually a movie made in Hawaii with some. I don't know everybody on this production, but it's actually about the Native Hawaiian perspective and the legal overthrow by the United States of Hawaii. Okay, you don't need to watch Moana. You don't need to watch Moana. Like, people are discovering they don't need to eat McDonald's. Right, because McDonald's also supports GENOCIDE and PALESTINE, and you don't need to support that. You need to eat food. You don't need to eat a Big Mac, right? People need some relaxing time. You don't need to watch a GENOCIDE blood-covered Disney movie. You don't need that. I mean, you want that, but I was reading about the stages, where the West is collectively, and the U.S. obviously is at the reigning champion there, right? But and it was from a global South Shangri-La conference and international geopolitics, and trying to build peace and trying to build a positive, livable future in the Southeast Asian region. and they were talking about how we don't need more military. We don't need, like I said, we don't need U.S. bases. We don't need this imperialism in the Pacific. We don't need colonialism, which is about extracting wealth of resources and land from the majority, the global majority, Africa, Asia, Latin Americans, the Pacific Islanders, Native peoples, to give it to European peoples, the first world, so-called civilized peoples, and in particular their oligarchies that run them. And we don't, that system, right? And and so the U.S. is the continuation of that system, but now that system is running its course, and a lot of people are in a stage. A lot of the Western world is in a phase of deep grief. Some don't even realize that, but and like, as somebody who was someone who was forced to learn English and was forcefully indoctrinated into American conditioning, brainwashing, which is to say colonial capitalist white supremacy, in the U.S. schools, because I went to a U.S. colonial school, like, because the U.S. is not even a real state in Hawaii, and so all the public and private and charter schools are all colonial brainwashing facilities. They're all residential schools. They're all boarding schools, in the Native American way, and literally they beat Hawaiians for speaking Hawaiian. Like I said, I don't speak Hawaiian because my mother had her hands shattered by nuns, Catholic nuns, but the public schools did the same thing to kids too. Mormons, there are Mormon schools, they're all about beating the Hawaiian out of Hawaiians, beating the Hawaiian history out of Hawaiians' brains, right? So I understand what it is to be in grief, that, because I was forcefully made to be an American, and so I understand the Western American mind, and it's a phase of grief, right? And part of the grief is, the stuff you love is bathed in blood. And that's sad. It's kind of like learning that your uncle was a horrible murderer and a pedophile. But that's what it is. Your Uncle Sam. He's both of those things. And your Disney is that thing too. And that's going to be there's a lot of grief that's going to come of that. There's a lot of Disney adults who are learning that their childhood was there to cover up massive amounts of death and suffering. And that's going to be a lot of grief. It's like cutting off a Gen X or Boomer, really problematic, really, really just toxic parent. I'm speaking from personal experience. So I understand it's not easy to do these things, because I have family that I have had to cut off. It doesn't make your parents know. Understanding that colonialism and capitalism and your country and the forces within it and the culture within them, right, are hugely problematic and have to change. It doesn't, especially if you're like older and you've lived in a time when America and the West seemed like it was a civilized place. You still have the memories and the experiences that you've lived through for the last 40, 50, whatever years of your life, right? And that's why Boomers and Gen Xers have really trouble letting go of their own residual self-image as defenders of freedom and democracy in America, and our Western representative American democracy, and our Disney is great and bringing justice and freedom to the world. And you when confronted with that, right, it's like almost impossible or very hard for many of them to let go of that, because that's your identity. That's who you were raised as. So I'm like a borderline millennial, Gen X, Xennial, right at the cusp, 1983, between Gen X and the millennial generation. So I was raised believing in the United States project. Like I went to a $20,000 a year Ivy League feeder school. So I understand, having hope in this future as part of this great American project, and we're going to bring freedom and justice to the world. And maybe I'll be a rock star or a computer programmer, or I'll work as an engineer, and I'll be part of this great American project to save the world from the evils of communism and Russia. What is something over there? I think there's communism, or maybe there's a China or a Russia, and there's like authoritarianism out there, and I'll be a great part of saving the world from that. Right? That's what the United States forcefully indoctrinated me into under its illegal occupation. So I understand that that's hard to let go of. My family is super liberal, right? And they don't want to talk about any of the stuff that I bring up. And that I still love my family, but I also know that they're like their mentalities are hugely a major problem. My parents are Native Hawaiians, but they don't believe they're Hawaiians. They're like so deeply brainwashed. It's depressing sometimes. So it is a process of grief, right? And also, it's it's accepting that your favorites are hugely problematic. Like your movies, your culture is hugely problematic, right? Is also another process of grief, right? Accepting, some people are like, I can't not go to Starbucks. I can't, because Starbucks is also on the list of GENOCIDE corporations, right? I can't not have my Starbucks. That was my life. Every day I would go and I have my cinnamon chai dolce latte every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then 3 times on Saturday. I will have my latte. All my friends are in the in the Starbucks. All of my, I would read the New York Times and I would like love all those stories, and then I would go to, like, I met my first date in the Starbucks. I married my partner after talking, and 25 dates at the Starbucks. I can't not go to Starbucks. Starbucks is like part of me. Starbucks is my identity. I am a Starbucks adult. I am a Disney adult. I'm a McDonald's adult. Like, I get it. I went to Starbucks a lot. Part of Neofeud I made in a Starbucks. I like released Neofeud from a Starbucks. I haven't gone to a Starbucks in the last over a year. And even if I could afford to go to a Starbucks now, I wouldn't, because GENOCIDE, and it's complicity and all of that system. So, and that involves phases of grief, So I'm just acknowledging that this is not like, I'm not saying, oh my God, so you're saying I can't watch Moana 2. Do you care about the lives of innocent people and children? More than being entertained for a bit? Like, then you will, or you don't, and not just that, but, and also, like, do you care about, like, it's going to be painful. I'm not lying. It's going to be painful to deal with. It's good. The deep phase of grief the West is going to go through. The Euro and Euro settler world, the colonial capitalist world is going to go through. It is going to be a deep and protracted internal collective funeral. Like, I know since COVID, people don't want to talk about death and loss and suffering, because 2 million people died of BSL-3 pathogens that everyone was in denial of and still are complicit in. Another way you're complicit in GENOCIDE is the mass death due to this virus, and not taking precautions despite knowing better, right? But that's kind of creates that's another layer of not wanting to. But grief is a process. Loss is a process, and I even was like, I've been thinking about this a lot. I was kind of in denial of that for a long time. Or for many of the last recent years, and I'm like, I'll just get through this. I'll just have another caffeinated drink, and I'll have some more I'll have a drink of water, and then I'll just like not think about it, But it's like you have to, and I was like recently, one of the recent holidays, I was like crying because I realized, like, and I didn't really get why I was, but it was like, oh, it's because like many of my family members are basically dead to me, or they're not even necessarily dead, but like the relationships I had with many of my family and friends is over because they are not changing and they're not gonna change. And there's like, well, maybe they'll change. I'm kind of like, let me just give it a little bit of time, but they are not changing, and I can't change them, And so that's a loss, even though they're still alive, they're not dead, but like the family that I used to have is not around anymore. The people and friends and colleagues that I used to have, they are our relationships are finished. It's not coming back. Because part of it is like, well, after COVID, after COVID and after a little bit, and people are gonna get better, and and I was like, no, that's actually done now. Right? That's actually over now. And also, like, your relationship with your media. Now, of course, the relationship with media is like, well, I mean, that's just a movie. But the thing is, a lot of Americans and Westerners are really emotionally tied to their movies. I mean, many Western people, many Americans and Europeans and Western people are identify and care more about fictional characters than their own friends and family and real humans. And we can see this, about how much they get their so riled up about certain movies. They'll, like, people will go on entire fanatical campaigns and attack and even kill people, and certainly call for that. So people get really wrapped up in this stuff, and that's part of the Western experience, is to love your corporations. They say actually the average 10-year-old American or Western child can recognize 1,000 brands, but can't recognize like 10 plants, like in their neighborhood, right? So it's normal to care more about fictional, made-up corporate brands and logos and fictional characters and reality and fictional media money-making empires, right? Like Disney's IPs and all that, than it is to care about the natural world or your own human people in your vicinity. And that's, like, really sad. But that's also, like, that was not really a positive thing either. That's kind of sick. It is not kind of sick. That is sick. It's part of the soul loss of colonialism and capitalism, and in a hyper-mediated 21st century version of that, right? But part of, like, getting better and, like, taking out the poison is you have to vomit out. It's like the like the story of the Wendigo. You have to vomit out all the poison. The Wendigo is a Native American tale and legend of our relatives there in North Turtle Island. But you have to vomit out all the poison that you have in you, right? And so part of that is vomiting out all of the Mickey Mouse eared crap that you've swallowed. I'm not saying you have to, like, never watch a Disney movie ever again per se. Giving them money gives money to GENOCID in PALESTINE and also in Hawaii and to Empire in general. I mean, the real, I mean, one of the hard parts is, like, if you take it to its logical conclusion, no American, Canadian, European, or any Western country and any of its products can ever be supported. Like, all your taxes go straight to, but you can't really stop paying that. I mean, it's like, it's difficult to completely cut off from all the, because just living and breathing and working in the West, the U.S., etc., is supporting those places. And so I'm not saying everybody has to, like, so it's an extreme ask, but, like, that's why the BDS list has very specific. I mean, they have specific, like, this will make maximum impact if you boycott this at this time, right? And but Disney is on that list right now, right? Because it's gonna have a really big impact. The reality is, if the collective West ceased to exist, then the world would be a happier place. I'm sorry, that is just how it is. But, like, that's not really feasible given where the world is at and where people are at. But, like, making consumer choices to not buy one product and buy another product, that is not an impossible ask. It can seem like an impossible ask to people to not pay for a Disney movie, right? But if you really think about it, right, and literally, you will not die if you do not spend $50 freaking to go and watch some culturally appropriated, doesn't help Hawaiians at all, hurts Hawaiians and Pacific Islanders more than it helps, and supports billionaires and supports giant corporations, and it supports GENOCIDE and PALESTINE, right? It's not that big of an ask. You can watch anything, You could play Neofeud. If you want to support us, the Silver Spoon Games. You can get any of our games. You can. I know never plays video games, but Neofeud is a cyberpunk adventure game made by an actual Native Hawaiian. All the money that you spend on this goes straight back to us to keep on actually trying to rebuild Hawaii through all of the work that we do at the Silver Spoon Cooperative, including educational work like I'm doing right now, anti-colonial, anti-capitalist educational work including restoring our ecology. This is some of the. This is I just did this Patreon update yesterday, so just a quick aside. I did 3 separate interviews with Native American, Indigenous Pacific Islanders, Native Saipan, Marianas people, as well as Okinawan, Ryukyuan people to get education out about those topics on the Twitch. I'm going to also upload this to the YouTube channel. And also, we continued our restorative ecology at the Silver Spook Hui Ahupua'a restoration project. Or basically, we're doing our best. We're collecting berries and banyan tree berries specifically to use as the fertilizer for the increased restoration of indigenous ecology. This is actually helping Hawaii. So when every sale of Disney movies like Moana hurts Hawaiians, and it causes more wildfires, it causes more displaced Hawaiians, and it just massively hurts us. And it's a bunch of BS. And it's Dwayne Johnson is not a good actor. Also, I'm sorry, you suck. I hate to say it. I don't particularly care about him. He's got billions of dollars. He's fine. Also, he's good friends with Bob Iger and many ISRAELAS. So, but every dollar you spend on this doesn't help us. But every dollar you spend on all the Silver Spook games or the Silver Spook Patreon will go directly to help actual Native Hawaiians, right? And like, obviously, I don't have the money to make Moana, right? And like, this isn't Moana, but it will actually help Hawaiians to watch their movies. You'll learn more about Hawaii watching that movie than watching Moana. I mean, this is just one. This off the top of my head. I came across this from, Aina Moana, which is actual Native Hawaiian run organization. Like if you want to support an organization, you're like, which one can I support? You can support this one. This is just one that is run by actual Native Hawaiians. That is about achieving environmental health, sustainability, and social justice, and deoccupying the Hawaiian lands. Okay, so this will actually help Native Hawaiians. Supporting them, right? So, watching Moana is gonna not do the opposite of that. Okay, but anyways, and so here's just since we're talking about the Pacific though, because Moana isn't just about Hawaii. It's about Moana is a massive syncretist massive white cultural appropriation of many Pacific Islanders, right? With complicity of a bunch of Hollywood pro-GNOCIDE sellouts. Okay, I'm just gonna say it like that because that's what it is. Here's an actual international Pacific educational series of videos. I don't have this up yet, but I did talk to my friend Akemi, who is an indigenous Okinawan person, and of course talk to our friend an indigenous video game maker, Megan Byrne of Hill Agency, which is a cyber noir adventure game, a cyber noir game, detective game, and also talk to Ocean Lonnie, who is is from the Marianas and also has been a environmental activist, an indigenous land protector, and fought on the international stage against the United States destruction of her lands in the Marianas, in Saipan specifically. And so if you want to support that work, then you can become a Patreon patron, or you can, of course, directly support us through Ko-Fi and getting any of these games, and obviously sharing these streams around and subscribing and all those nice things that you can do. So those are things, if you really want to help Hawaiians, that's those things that you can do. Do not think you're helping Hawaiians by watching this movie, by sharing this movie, by telling people how great it is. That's not helping us at all. Now, I know that you're going to probably hear from a lot of other people. I'm sure there are. I know there are Hawaiians because I have family members. Like I already said, I have family members that don't understand who they are, right? What the United States actually is. Who they are high frequency trade. I sometimes will bring up that I was trained to be a high frequency trading algorithm programmer for Goldman Sachs or BlackRock or some major Wall Street bank, or a drone programmer for the United States Air Force, right? But instead of joining the U.S. military, learning later on that what I was doing was being a global stormtrooper, speaking of Disney and Star Wars, being a global imperial evil, right? Instead of joining up and learning later and then, oh no, and then already doing that, I just said, well, I got wise enough to not work for major corporations and major Wall Street banks and work for the U.S. military. So thank goodness, because otherwise that would have been a much worse position to be in, right? And then I would have to Aaron Bushnell out. And yeah, I'm saying if you're in the U.S. military, you should quit or you should do an Aaron Bushnell, because that's the only morally acceptable position. And so, there are many Hawaiians that will disagree with what I'm saying, but that is just sad to me. And that is emblematic of the success, the until now success of the U.S. empire's brainwashing and corralling and herding of Hawaiians into cannon fodder for them and for their geopolitical hegemonic neocon ideas of nonsensical, unhinged, and also failing planetary domination. But it doesn't make it. It's still sad, Like I said, my parents are brainwashed Hawaiians. They don't believe they're Hawaiian. They don't even believe they're Hawaiian. They're white Catholics that are the wrong skin color. It's so sad. My mom looks like a black person too. Like my mom was like is made fun of by the Catholic Church for looking too black. Because she has like very bushy hair. She's curly hair, and she just internalizes that as she's a bad person. Right? She just internalizes like, I just have to be a good Christian American person, and if I straighten my hair enough, eventually, the church, the Christian American church, and the United States will accept me. It's so depressing to think about. I can't think about it too much. I either get so mad or I get so sad. So I can't think about that too much. But that's what it's like to be a Hawaiian, is to hate yourself. Is to not even know who you are, hate yourself, and think that you might win approval of your oppressor if you change yourself. If you sign up for the military, if you go to Vietnam, right, like in the 60s, then America will love you. And then you come back and America still thinks you're a brown, black savage. That was the Hawaiian experience. Hawaiians were one of the most forced into the U.S. military. It's like black and indigenous people are some of the highest represented in the military, because the military goes and recruits from there to throw a bunch of black and brown people as cannon fodder, because they don't want to make as the precious little white children to get killed, right? And they try to get everyone else to fight their wars for them. That's just how colonialism tends to work. Also, they're cowards and they're not very good at fighting wars. That's why they're losing in ISRAEL and in many other places around the world, UKRAINE, and they lost against the Vietnamese. They lost against in the Korean War, and they lose everywhere. They're losing in Africa, and that's pathetic. But that's because the West is pathetic. But it's still the worst part is the brainwashing, right? The worst part is they're good at brainwashing. They're good at brainwashing, and Disney is part of that. And it's really sad to see that. Anyways, okay. I was trying to keep this like as direct as possible. So let's keep going with this though. Just so we get through some these notes. So I talked about the children being punished. There's videos of this, by the way. Again, I've shared this so many times. I've had like 10 million shares of this. Like, the original person who shared it. I've been sharing this little girl. You can look up who she is. I don't want to dox anybody, but like, this is an incident. Nothing has changed. And like millions of people, like this got like 100,000 retweets multiple times on Twitter. Nothing has changed in Hawaii. Right? So that is how much the United States is adamant about genocide of Native Hawaiians. Right? It does not care. It does not even care to even there's nothing. The teacher, the superintendent, the United States is just like, we'll take all the flat. We don't even care if we get shamed. We have to wipe Hawaiians out. It's kind of like it's like Palestine. We don't care how bad it looks that we're blowing up and shooting these missiles into that crossing, all those kids starving to death. We don't care. we're gonna go down the black hole because, you know, making a few dollars selling missiles is worth all these children dying. I mean, so that's worse than this, right? What's happening at PALSTINE was worse than this, right? But you know, that's kind of the point. It's like the U.S. is willing. The U.S. and the collective West, Europe, the NATO, G7, all the U.S. allies, Canada, Australia, they're all willing to throw everything down the drain for a handful of billionaires making a few more dollars, whilst the world is burning, and you're gonna keep killing all those little children to keep your system in place. So it's just the West has never had any morality ever in its entire history. And so in Hawaii, we are in solidarity with our relatives in the Levant region and PALESTINE, and we suffer far less than the direct death and starvation and bombings. But the principle and the way that the U.S. operates, and many people are pointing this out. I'm glad that many people who reshared these threads are pointing that out. Like, the way the U.S. treats Hawaii is the same way that, ISR country treats PALESTINE. Because it's exactly the same in that sense. Also, homeless youth on Oahu forced into survival sex. Very common. So this is what your tourism does for us. Okay, so don't fly to Hawaii this summer. Cancel your trip. Okay, in case you're wondering about the tourism doesn't help at all either. It's a zero Hawaiian any hotels, and zero Hawaiians own hotels. Less than 0.4% of Hawaiians own any Airbnbs, and Airbnbs generally are part of why we're homeless. Okay, let's get some actual history though. Hawaii had the highest literacy rate, 98%, world's first universal healthcare system, renewable hydropowered cities, near zero homelessness, and actual racial equality. Before the U.S. invaded, destroyed our system, and banned our language and culture, turning us into a slave plantation. Okay, so in case you didn't know that, and if you're American, you probably didn't know that. Prior to the U.S. coup, Hawaii had the highest literacy rate, universal healthcare, electric lights before the White House, affordable mass transit, industrialization, virtually no homelessness, full racial equality. Post-coup, all those statistics reversed. In 1869, in a symposium in Europe, the Europeans were faced with failed preconceptions about Hawaii, where Hawaii presented books, newspapers, publications on science, tech, engineering, art, philosophy, you name it. Hawaii had the greatest preponderance. We had subaquatic vehicles, submarines. I was just playing a steampunk game the other night, and it's submarines are one of the symbols of advanced countries in that era, or the ones that are inventing them. Hawaii actually had invented submarines. We had torpedo-proof vessels, electric-powered torpedoes, and also functioning hydro 100% renewable cities. Okay, so we already had the solution to climate change. People are talking about, oh my God, 3 degrees of warming in the West. Whatever will we do? Hawaii already knew what to do, right? It was called the end of capitalism. It's called socialism. It's called state-owned enterprises for healthcare, for energy, for infrastructure, and then worker cooperatives for everything else. And then actual racial equality, and then not being an empire. Because Hawaii did this without using African slaves, stolen native land, forcefully turning into forced laborers, huge swaths of the planet. All European countries needed slaves, or the way they did it, they needed to use the colonialism needed Africans, Asians to be plundered and subjugated to get a handful of Europeans into good living conditions. Hawaii did all of this without colonialism, right? So this is the solution, right? Deals with the colonialism, global injustice, the racism internally, the economic inequality between workers and the owners, and also the environmental problem. All the problems you can possibly think. Hawaii also dealt with the virus pandemic problem. Hawaii had universal health care. That's another reason why the West can't deal with the pandemic, right? So we had all the problems that are currently plaguing the planet. Well, the U.S. and the Western world, right? All the problems that many of these problems are global problems, but the ones that they're coming from a particular part of the planet, the capitalist colonizer world. Hawaii had already solved all those problems, and then the United States destroyed it all, right? So again, if the end of the U.S. occupation, and if the U.S. learned from the Hawaiian history, not just like didn't destroy it, but if Americans today could learn from the Hawaiian history, and the United States and Americans would copy or try to replicate the Hawaiian model, or demand the Hawaiian model from their government, from their leadership in the United States, Americans would just be doing so much. They would be doing so much better, healthcare wise, housing wise, infrastructure wise. I mean, in every possible domain. So this is the sad thing about Hawaii as well, and it's sad and infuriating, and it should be. Right? Why are Americans not taught this? Why are they not taught this? Well, because a handful of Mark Zuckerbergs want to burn the rest of the planet and then try to nuke it and live in a bunker somewhere, squeezing the last dollar from, squeezing the last dollar from the dead PALSTINE children's bodies. I guess that's why. Is that sane? No. Is that good? No. Is that the system you have in the U.S. and the U.S. and the West? Yes. This is a sugar plantation run by white oligarchs with subsequent occupation of Hawaii and the proclamation of a so-called republic. It was actually a plutarchy or oligarchy. That's what the U.S. is, and that's what European countries are. Dedicated to plunder and ethno-class system, plantation feudalism was built up. The PG protectionist government, protectorate, provisional government, and republic sought to replicate developing class and Hawaiian national consciousness with strict ethnic conscience while enforcing Anglo-American values. They forced everyone into, this is the thing, Hawaii didn't have racism before the United States. The U.S. had to instill racism into Hawaii by forcing people into ethnically separated cultural groups, Japanese, Chinese, Filipino, Hawaiians, and then turn everyone against each other by literally insinuating rumors and brainwashing. The U.S. controlled the education system. The U.S. had to force ethnic strife and racism into the win-win cooperative, racism-free Black, Asian, and Pacific Islander actual pluricultural country, right? This is another tragedy, right? What do we do about racism and hatred and ethnic differences? Hawaii already had the solution. The United States literally consciously destroyed the solution to the problems of racism the United States and the West continue to deal with, because their leadership want to make tons of money oppressing the entire working class. If you don't have racism, it makes it difficult to have subhumanized, extremely exploitable labor, right? There is a horrible but logical explanation for why you need to have continuous hatred and the differences and inequality between peoples based upon arbitrary differences like skin color and nose shape and things like that, and background. It benefits the tiny 1% of the population that has all the money and the power, and they tend to be white. So Hawaii didn't have that, because if you have racism, it's going to tend to lead towards a system where it's very easy to take advantage of that for one segment of the population benefiting from the exploitation of the other, right? And anyway, so the United States instilled racism into Hawaii. Also made it harder for Hawaii to have an uprising like in Haiti, so Hawaii has been a slave colony. By the way, these people lived in 5x5 boxes with 10 men sleeping in the equivalent of like a studio apartment, on the ground, on the dirt, centipedes and insects flowing into it, surviving on making enough money to afford a bowl of rice a day. That's it. So it was a slave plantation in the 20th century. Slave plantation in the 20th century. That's what the U.S. put in Hawaii, right? And they got rid of the successful system. This is the USS Boston landing in Hawaii to overthrow our sovereign country with the world's highest literacy rate, like I already said. Shortly after, we were converted into an oligarch-run banana republic for wealthy white capitalists. And also another fact, Hawaii had electricity in our capital before the U.S. White House electricity. Another one, the United States president was going to the bathroom in an outhouse with no indoor plumbing and no flush toilet when Hawaii's capital had full indoor plumbing and all of these advanced technologies, right? The United States was so backward, right, compared to Hawaii, right, that the U.S. was actually superstitious of flush toilets when Hawaii was like already living in Hawaii. You know, people say like China is like the 2050s, and then the Chinese are like, no, the U.S. and the Europeans are you're all in the 1980s, and you're falling apart, right? Hawaii was like that in the 1800s, right? The United States actually said that the U.S. president was superstitious of using a toilet. And it was a lot of Americans and Europeans were like afraid of like their immortal soul being stolen by these demonic devices of demonic devices of Satan's capture of your life essence inside of the gramophone. You know, Hawaiians had like electronic communication. There was no this idea that these indigenous people are backward, superstitious. This is a bunch of nonsense. Right? Hawaii was like the way that China has robot electric car charge ports. By the way, China's going to have less emissions this year. China might have already peaked in carbon emissions 7 years ahead of the schedule. Right? And China has 5G, 6G technology, ubiquitous high-speed rail, everything electrified, digitized, the world-class AI that actually does useful things like automate all their ports, all their trains. You have electric trains that can go onto, they're like Lego trains that can go onto regular streets and operate alongside normal vehicular traffic. They have $8,000 world-class electric vehicles, quantum computing, you name it, artificial suns, fusion. So the same way that China is like the future, the Star Trek utopian future compared to America, Hawaii was the Star Trek and super advanced indigenous future compared to the United States. And the United States got mad, like the U.S. is getting mad right now at China, and they tried to start war and destroy it. The difference is the U.S. can't win a war against China. The U.S. militarily did subjugate Hawaii, but we're way smaller. Whereas China is 4 times the size of the United States, population-wise. USS Boston landing in Hawaii. But the one reason why we invented the submarine was to militarily defeat the United States in this would-be attempt to destroy us, right? So because that's another thing that you have to have when you have giant empires is you do have to have a military. Otherwise, these moral-free Westerners, like the U.S. and the European colonial capitalists, will just come in and do whatever they want to you. And that's why the armed struggle, which is justified, and also any civilized country acknowledges the armed struggle which Nelson Mandela and the Palestinians currently are engaged in, which is morally and legally right under international law. Any civilized country acknowledges that. The U.S. don't acknowledge that. The Europeans don't acknowledge that. Canadians don't acknowledge that. And so the U.S. and because we were not able to build enough submarines and torpedo-proof vessels before the U.S. military showed up, this happened. So that's one of the reasons why. Or we were unable to secure enough military alliances across the world to stop the U.S. overthrow. And so the United States did this horrible treachery. But anyways, USS Boston landed in Hawaii to overthrow a sovereign country, and it made a banana republic. This is Liliuokalani who petitioned against annexation. Sorry, this is Liliuokalani, and on the right is the petition against annexation. She was deposed by the U.S. illegal coup in Hawaii. Then President William McKinley was petitioned by 95% of Native Hawaiians. Again, this is the lie of U.S. democracy. The United States has never had a democracy. The West has never had a real democracy ever in its existence. It's only ever had plutocracy and racist colonialist tyrants. And then collaborationist white workers, usually white men, at best. That's all the West has ever had. But 95% of Hawaiians actually did sign this and said, we do not want to be part of the United States. For good reason, because why would you want to turn into a slave colony? Why would you want to turn into a chattel cotton-picking slave colony of black and brown people when you had a prosperous black and brown and Asian coexisting Star Trek future with universal healthcare and electricity and hydropower and everyone just having their rights respected and living prosper? Why would you want to join America, right? It's a very good reason, right? It's because America will destroy you and turn you into a hell, which is what Hawaii is, actually, for Hawaiians. Today. Many Americans think that Hawaiians lived in huts prior to colonization. The U.S. actually deindustrialized Hawaii before 1898, where you had mass transit. Okay, so this is like some of the documents on this history. You can go look these up as well. This is an article from 1800s Hawaii where all of the electricity was functioning. The lighting of Honolulu by electricity is almost inferior to comply. Again, I want to point out again, the electricity that is powering the city of Honolulu in the 1800s, in this case, was renewable hydroelectricity. Okay, the United States and the Western world have very adamantly and specifically tried to stop the world from having renewable technology, right? Why does the U.S. Why did the U.S. destroy Hawaii, remove all of the hydropower? They literally they forcefully disconnected. Like, I'm gonna take our kids to go visit. Part of our summer education is we're gonna try to go and visit the Hawaiian hydro-powered turbines that activated all the electrical filaments that lit all of Hilo, that lit Honolulu, right, and provided power in the 1800s, in the mid 1800s, to all of our cities. And we're gonna learn about that. Why is that? Why did the United States disconnect that and put fossil fuel power in? It's so again, right? You think of Hawaii. Hawaii is full of waterfalls. It's a beautiful place. You know, it's full of water. There's so much water flowing all the time because of how much rainfall there is. Like one of the wettest places, in inches of precipitation per year, Kauai Summit, one of our islands, is like the number one, Mount Waialeale, is the wettest place in the world. There's so much water, right? Why are we not using hydropower when we had it in the 1880s, before the United States, before Europe? The reason why is because the United States and the Europeans and racist colonial capitalist destroyers cannot control the weather. They cannot, well, they're trying, but they cannot control rainfall and they cannot control sunlight. This is why, the reason why the climate is dying is because of Western, oligarchic, racist colonialism. That's why. Because in order to control your colonies, in order to keep control of your empire, your colonies, you have to keep them dependent on you for energy, right? That's what the petrodollar was for. Okay, so you literally, the planet is on fire, and there are there are record temperatures in India and Mexico right now that are killing people because of racism, because of colonialism, because of Europeans. That's why. Not even because it's. Not even because it'll be, because you could make money, right? You could make money. I mean, it's not good, but that is part of it. Capitalism prefers controllable resources. That is a part of it. But but on top of that, you cannot control countries who can use the sun, or can use the rain, or can use a naturally occurring plentiful resource like that, if they utilize the solar and hydropower. You can't control them because fossil fuel, right? Oil, gas, coal, those more easily are locally controlled, and you can keep control of those through by militarily controlling shipping lanes, through embargoes, right? Through controlling the transport of goods across, especially oceans. This is where the Westerners on land, they're not doing as well. That's why the Belt and Road Initiative is destroying the United States and global hegemony. Part of the system of getting rid of these idiot, horrible people. But if you have renewable technologies in place in mass, it becomes difficult to subjugate, crush, and destroy and put down colonies by starving them to death, by turning their power off, by forcefully deindustrializing them, by shutting off the electricity to entire continents, right? This is why they don't want Africa to have solar. That's why they don't want Asia to have solar. This is why they don't want anyone to have solar. This is why there will never be a green Western transition, because the West cannot stop being supremacist, hegemonic, just planetary supervillains, I guess. The U.S. just is trying to sanction China for curing diabetes. I don't know how you can get more evil than trying to stop people from having a horrible, debilitating, blinding, pain-causing illness like diabetes. Why is the U.S. trying to ban diabetes cures, right? To make a few more dollars for a handful of freaking billionaires, right? But that's how the West is. It's a sick place, and it has to go away. I'm sorry. Not the people can stay, but the systems of colonialism, capitalism, racism, and the mentality, the colonial mentality, that racist mentality that is part of that, all has to go bye-bye. They need to control everything, and dominate other people, other countries. That has to go bye-bye. Okay, and that's why you don't have the planet is dying because you're racist. Okay, that's another way to think about that. This is Hawaii. This was the solution to all of your problems, though, and then you destroyed it. 54% of Americans can't read above the 6th grade level today. Teachers quit in droves with trillions of student debt they can't pay. In a stark contrast to Hawaii's universal free quality education, and we had the world's highest literacy rate. We invented public mass free education of high quality. The U.S. doesn't have high quality education. The West has never had any education, I would argue. They only had conditioning and like sesquipedalian liberal propagandist manufacturing facilities, also called schools, and Western schools. They don't teach you anything about history, economics, or politics, and that's why they're losing in all the wars, and they're losing international, and they're doing ridiculous, nonsensical things like sanctioning countries who produce all their semiconductors and majority of their products, right? Which is ahistorical and moronic, but that's because the U.S., Harvard, even the elite educational institutions teach basically comic book nonsense stories about who the West is and how victorious they've been in all of the last 70 years of wars. They literally, I was listening to a non-Western person talk about what they teach in like Harvard and West Point and Oxford, right? And what they teach is the great successes of Afghanistan and Vietnam, and the great successes of all of the U.S.'s dozens and 100+ wars and interventions, and how great, how that is works so marvelously. And that's why they're losing in all of their wars right now, and they're going to keep losing more. And it's going to be sad and depressing that people are going to keep dying in the ridiculous, needless proxy wars. But you know, one of the solutions is you need to have an education system like Hawaii had, right? Because Hawaii actually had global historical education. Our heads of state were the first to circumnavigate the globe, spoke like 6+ languages, and also were well versed and trained in the most modern sciences. Okay, so this is the Kalakaua invented. He invented a subaquatic vehicle. He created an actual design for it. This is the equivalent of Joe Biden inventing like 1 nanometer chips, right? Joe Biden is awake for 5 minutes of the day. For 3 of those minutes, he's like pooping his brains out, after all the shit he swallowed yesterday, which is everything that the neocons that tell him what to say fed him, right? So the president of the United States is barely awake. When he was functional, all he could do was propagate whatever the richest person in the room and the most unhinged Dr. Strangelove warmonger wanted. That's all Biden has ever done, is whatever the richer, more powerful people have told him to do. He's a total coward, which is basically what, that's the ideal U.S. and Western president and prime minister, right? It's just a total coward that does whatever the most horrible people in the world want. Not a smart person, not an educated person, not a capable diplomat even, right? The Hawaiian leadership were world-class diplomats and inventors of like cutting-edge technology, okay? But that's because we had an education system, not a conditioning system, brainwashing system like the United States and the Europeans have. And it's depressing, but yeah, this is actually this is from years ago. After 25 reinfections of COVID, most children now are barely functional. I mean, it's really depressing. It's very sad, but they're less and less and less and less functional. It's only getting worse. But this is before 2020. 54% of Americans couldn't read below a 6th grade level. That means we have an epidemic of illiteracy. Yeah. But this is the way the United States likes it. Is the more now the U.S. is just straight up book burning. The liberals and conservatives are like abolishing libraries, setting librarians on fire. This is just pathetic. The U.S. won't exist in about 5 years, so I don't know what the point of that is. There's gonna be 6 U.S.s. You know what I'm saying? After the Civil War that balkanizes the U.S. into 7 different territories. The Floridian Alliance, the Pacific Northwest Secessionist Forces, and the Eastern True American Loyalists, or whatever Alex Garland said. I think he's wrong. I think it's going to be worse than that. almost 4 in 10 can't afford their student loan payments. This is the subaquatic vehicle that our leader invented, the torpedo-proof vessel. When Jules Verne was writing 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, our president was already inventing submarines, right? What was the president of the United States doing? Oh, trying to make himself rich, right? Saying things like, we need Hawaii to get our fair share of China. That's what President McKinley was literally saying, right? Which is like, how do we subjugate more islands that are better than us and embarrassing us, so that we can go kill some more Chinese people and take all their stuff, rather than make anything useful, right? That's what the United States was doing. The sovereign country of Hawaii had black citizens before the U.S. Civil War. In fact, U.S. slaves that stepped onto Hawaiian soil were considered free. The Chinese were full citizens in Hawaii as the U.S. chained them up to build railroads on the West Coast. So did Canada, with terrible racism and lynching of Asians. This is a certificate of citizenship of the African person who became a free, equal person, Moses Allen. This is Anthony D. He was a slave in the United States who became free in Hawaii. This was Anthony D. Allen, born into slavery in New York in 1774. In Hawaii, he became a full equal citizen in the 1700s, and he fled slavery at 24. And in Waikiki, he became a successful businessman. And among other things, he started the first bowling alley, built the first carriage road up Manoa Valley, built a school, and ran the first hospital for American seamen in Honolulu. So again, Hawaii was light years ahead of the U.S. and Europe. The U.S. and Europe still don't treat African people equal. It's elite. You can't be a citizen of France as an Algerian. It's pathetic. Europe hates Muslims. They think Asians are subhuman. You can say the N-word in Sweden and Finland with impunity. This is incredibly disturbing. The Europeans and Americans have not even ever approached racial equality and actual equity, equality, economic and legal and social equality. The West is going backwards as we speak. Nazis are filling the West. Mask off. Nazis are sig heiling in Germany and the United States. It's pathetic. It's really sad. It's depressing, but too bad. An example of actual racial equality, existing socialism without racial hatred, greater technological advancement, and a POC nation. It put the U.S., the West, and Europe to shame. It blew their white man's burden out of the water, which is why they illegally crushed white. So this is the kind of propaganda the U.S. put out. This is what they still put out, which is that civilization comes from, the Anglos, the Americoids, and the French, and Western Europe is the pinnacle of civilization. When it couldn't be more the opposite of that. Carrying China, India, Africa on Britain's back, and America. Uncle Sam carrying Cuba, Hawaii, Puerto Rico on Uncle Sam's back, from oppression, barbarism, ignorance, vice, superstition, brutality towards civilization. Of course, but again, as I have just shown, it is the absolute opposite. And everything that the West has ever done, the only thing it has ever exceeded, the only thing that the Greeks, the Romans, the British, the French, Spanish, and Americans have ever excelled at, the entire Western world, going all the way back to their proto-Western peoples of the Hellenics, right? The only thing the West has ever excelled at is lying and being horrible, violent, mass killers. And then lying about the mass killing and claiming that you're civilized. This was civilization. The U.S. destroyed it. The West destroyed it. Everything since, has just been a long slog to try to get back to where we were. Hawaii is, again, we would be living. There would not be I would argue there would not be a climate change problem, in 2000, if the U.S. and the West had followed the Hawaii model. We could have been on the electric cars already existed in 1890s, right? But the West insisted World War I and World War II were about colonialism. But if the West had just copied the model of the Hawaiians, gotten rid of the colonialist system, developed their own countries with win-win cooperation, without colonial enslavement, without the U.S. needing to take over Central South America under Monroe Doctrine, without the Europeans needing to subjugate Africa, without needing to subjugate Asia, with opium wars and the colonialism in India, and stealing all of China's tea and silk, and plundering Vietnam, and having sweatshops, right? If the West had simply copied the Hawaiian model, the whole world would be a environmentally healthier, less racist, happy place. It's literally because you keep wrecking everything. Not just Hawaii, but everything. So, Sun Yat-sen also brought the revolution to China. Was a forerunner revolution. Was raised in Hawaii. Used the Hawaiian model as a model for a technologically modern, politically independent, and actively anti-imperialist China. In the late 1800s, he was raised. The key proposal was socialism. By extension, Hawaii was an actual existing socialist country in the 1800s. Hawaii's coup by U.S.-backed gunboat diplomacy to smash non-white countries, building actual anti-racist, socialist, thriving country was a blueprint that would later be used on countless Asian, Pacific, African, and other countries around the world. This is the 1893 members of the white business community that met in a corporate office in Honolulu to plan a coup against our government. As you notice, they're all white men. One of them would become the future CEO of Hawaiian Electric Company, William Hall. He forcefully removed all of the hydroelectric power and installed fossil fuel. 3 of the top white capitalist oligarchs who collaborated to overthrow Hawaii were working for the electric company. So electric energy sovereignty, destruction is very important to maintaining colonial imperial systems. That's why they hate China giving free, cheap solar to Africa and helping them build their own indigenous solar panels. So does Yemen. So does Iran. They're all building this solar. This because that's the actual model. If you want to have real sovereignty, you're gonna need a military against these colonizers. As you're building the model, they're not gonna agree with it. They're gonna try to destroy it militarily. You need to have to stop meddling. So you do need intelligence agencies and a way to counteract the meddling of the U.S. in your democracy, which is what the U.S. is doing all over the world. I mean, Georgia, Taiwan, Central South America, overthrowing color revolution, you name it. So you need that. Energy sovereignty, so you need renewable or some way to not be. If the U.S. tries to embargo and cut you off, if the Europeans and Americans try to cut you off from your energy, you need your own indigenous energy system. And these men, Dole Pineapple was another one of the leaders. So food sovereignty, Dole destroyed Hawaiians' food sovereignty along with the Americans and other American businessmen. Right, took all the Hawaiians and brought Filipinos in and enslaved them to make cash crops like sugar to make tons of money. Hawaii made enough food to feed all of the Hawaiian people several times over. And Hawaii fed California. After the U.S. occupation, 90% of Hawaii's food was imported. Okay, so food and then energy independence destroyed by the United States. And we're still in that situation. And so, anyway. This is all the countries that the United States, the number one country for death, destruction, and not independence. These are all the U.S. military and CIA interventions since World War II. Using the Hawaiian overthrow as one of the first models of American subterfuge and destruction. These are what Hawaii, Ukraine, Taiwan, and Brazil all have in common, in case you're curious. I'm not going to go into all of that right now, but they're all U.S.-backed coups to make for global imperialism and mass planetary control. This is President McKinley saying we must have Hawaii to get our share of China, by the way, though. This is where we're at today. I already shown some of this, so I'll skip some of that. But, so Hawaii went from the most prosperous place on the planet, the most advanced country on the earth, the greatest place in the world in terms of everything that matters. And it's turned into this dumpster. Military base, polluted military base filled racist dystopia where we can barely read, where the U.S. military is dumping jet fuel in our water, and we have by far the highest cost of living of Hawaii is the most capitalist inequality in any place in the so-called United States. It's literally a magnitude above the worst of the continental United States. The district of the United States capital is the most unequal place in the entire so-called United States. And Hawaii is magnitudes above that. That's how bad it is in Hawaii. You would never know that, though, when you come on your vacation. Don't come on vacation. That's part of why it's so unequal. Every time you vacation in Hawaii, you're solidifying the United States occupation of Hawaii. Neofeud is a thread about my life as an impoverished Hawaiian social worker, STEM teacher for other poor, homeless, living in slums beneath billionaire mansions. My experience is refracted through the lens of satirical cyberpunk. So if you want something that's entertaining, this is something you can do. It's a game. It's not a big Hollywood movie, but it is a game that you can buy, and it does help to fund made by actual Hawaiians, economically under a cooperative, not anti-capitalist system. We have no bosses and landlords here at the Silver Spoon Cooperative, and all the money goes back to fund our operations. And also, it's also it's not a game that's directly it's not immediately visibly about Hawaii, but it is about the experience of being a Hawaiian ultimately, because it's from my perspective and my opinion. But it's through the lens of dystopian, science fictional, satirical, cyberpunk. But it is ultimately about the Hawaiian experience. And in this, I have a thread within thread within threads within threads. And I gotta go because it's 1:04. But I just want to point out this is about Moana, but I can't talk about why the U.S. occupation that Disney is complicit in is a problem without going through that history. That's why I wanted to go through that as well. In addition, some current events. This is another tone deafness. Thousands of Hawaiians like me are homeless by homeless by Maui fires. We're still living on a street with $8,000 rents put out by profit-hungry landlords like Disney, all supported by the U.S. occupation. Disney is a landlord, huge landlord in Hawaii. Disney is appropriately posting Maui. Well, again, the Maui people, thousands of Hawaiians are still homeless, living on the street because of Maui fires that Disney helped to cause. And Disney is over there posting about Maui for Moana 2. How tone deaf. How terrible. How despicable. 19-year-old Lahaina resident Kauai Brown and her partner survived the August wildfire and got housed in a hotel, only to get kicked out just before Xmas. They lived in their car for the next couple of months on the beach. Brown is due with a baby any month. Every tourist that comes to Hawaii is forcing Hawaiians out of these spaces, these few spaces that we have, because the hotels think, I can make a lot more money with this tourist money that they're going to pay for this room. So literally, you are destroying Hawaiians. You are forcing Hawaiians onto the street. Over 50 Hawaiians have committed suicide due to despair from the Lahaina fires. So you're literally killing Hawaiians when you fly to Hawaii. Okay? Don't fly to Hawaii. You can financially, economically support us, share this information. Number one thing you could do is, Americans, you could take control of your United States country and get it to stop occupying Hawaii. I know that sounds like a big ask, but you have to stand with the people of Palestine and against your military-industrial complex. That is what is trying to forcefully maintain this occupation, and it will benefit you, and it will also benefit us. And if the United States military illegal colonial occupation ends, and we are able to begin to rebuild our country and our food and energy sustainability and actually have sovereignty, then there might come a day where you could visit Hawaii in an ethical way. Okay? But at this moment, it is not possible. Just in case anybody is asking, I know a lot of people ask that. The answer is no. You cannot visit Hawaii ethically at all. Period. This is like how can I visit? This is like how can I go to Israel ethically and vacation there, right? This is like asking how can I eat at McDonald's ethically, knowing what you know about the genocide that they're complicit in. This is not a good question to ask, And if you get mad, right? It's like, how can I work for the U.S. military ethically? There is not a possible way to do that. I'm sorry. If you want to fight for an ethical military, there's other militaries that you could defect to, but there's not the United States and not its allies. I'm sorry, you're the planetary evil. I'm sorry that you're the bad guys, but you're the baddies. That wasn't a joke. That's for real. I know that's a meme that goes around, but no, you're working for the bad place. You individually don't have to choose to be part of it, but you're from the bad place. You're from the Empire. You're from Emperor Palpatine's Death Star, Star Destroyers, Stormtroopers, You're just not walking around with white masks. That's why Star Wars is not useful. Because there isn't a liberal Western so-called democracy that has elections that runs the empire. Because that's what we have in the planet Earth. And when you support those entities, anything you do to support any of those entities, the corporations, the governments, and the non-profits even, and the for-profits like Disney, you're supporting a global destruction, and there's no possible way to make that ethical. All you can do is try your absolute best to do everything you possibly can in every way that you can, including through boycotts, including through not flying to Hawaii, including through political action on the street, at the college campuses, everywhere you can possibly do it to end that. Self-immolation is an extreme form of communication, but I mean, that's something. That's why Aaron Bushnell was right. Wildfires have raised much of Hawaii's former capital, Lahaina, to the ground. Colonial land practices. Even the U.S. and Western media admit that it's the U.S. colonial, which is to say racist, illegal occupation, land practices, and tourism that are to blame. So when you fly here, even Western media is like, when you fly to Hawaii, you're causing more Lahaina. You're going to kill us some more. There's no ethical way to fly to Hawaii. In deadly Maui fires, many had no warning and no way out. Those who dodged barricades survived. I could, as long as there are hours in the universe, I will be able to keep going off on this topic. But a few more updates here. Indigenous Pacific Islanders, not just the United States, but also the French. Indigenous Pacific Islanders, we are literally being hunted by colonizers like France, and the U.S. continues to destroy our land. France is an ally with the U.S. in imperialism across the world, Africa and the Pacific and other places. And subjugate us and displace us. Weeks into New Caledonia is popular. New Caledonia is an island south of Hawaii in the Pacific of native people. The uprising against French colonial rule, white supremacist militias wreaked havoc on the island. Protesters say heavily armed Kanak hunting. So they are hunting native people in this island, our relatives there. Militias are continuously harassing indigenous native people, shooting live ammunition at them. I saw an image of the French are shooting native Pacific Islanders from helicopters. So what is the U.S. and the Europeans doing in the Pacific? The opposite of Moana, okay? Well, I don't know what they claim to be saying with Moana, but what the U.S. and the French are doing in the Pacific is literally going around and massacring native people. Okay? Last week, New Caledonia, I don't know what the point of Moana is, except to make a bunch of money for a bunch of cultural appropriators and sell out Pacific Islanders. What I like to say about is that they even all the customary political and religious authorities, they put money and economic interests ahead of the interests of life. So this is from the native people are like in the New Caledonia. They literally have to blockade the French white people, settler colonizers. It's like Israel. The settler colonizers are coming in, and they, like the West Bank, and they just shoot people. The military and the cops behind them and the white settler men just come in and just like fire away at random native people. So they're putting up these blockades to stop the racist colonizer French from just massacring their people with impunity. So that's just another. This is why are they doing that? 25% of the world's nickel, which is key for renewable energy and for military technology, is located in New Caledonia, and so it's the same thing as it's just continued colonization. Colonization never ended. It just put on a happy little Mickey Mouse ears, and then called itself neocolonialism or called itself freedom and democracy. Right? That's all that happened. The blood-covered, blood-splattered Satan face of European colonialism just put on a happy little mask and said, "Look. It's the happiest place on earth." No, it's the most effed up place on earth. It's called the United States and France and Britain. Look at the way the France is ally. This is them This is the French shooting native Pacific Islanders from a helicopter. Okay, that's what Europeans and Americans and Westerners are doing in the Pacific. It's just shooting native people, like Sarah Palin shooting at wolves from a helicopter. Okay. We don't need you here. We don't want you here. Get the hell out of here. Also, the original Lilo and Stitch was going to touch heavily on how tourism was negatively affected Native Hawaiians. But then Disney was opening a hotel in Hawaii, Disney Aulani, and then corporate demanded any relevance to the topic be removed. Disney has knowingly scrubbed the Native Hawaiian perspective off of their movies. Right? Because our perspective, some of the writers were like, oh, Hawaiians are actually not happy with tourism because they're obnoxious, they're stealing the land, they're forcing us out of our surf spots, out of our historical, cultural spots. Economically, it doesn't help us very much at all. It actually hurts us more than it helps us. We don't own any hotels. We don't profit. We're all working for these $7 an hour starvation wages in these horrible hotels, doing fake plastic hula for a bunch of rich white people. It's not even real hula. Hawaiians, right? And Disney, some writers, right, wrote this scene in Lilo and Stitch that was about the Hawaiian anti-tourist mentality that we have. And Disney deleted it. So Disney actively, repeatedly silences and smothers Native Hawaiian voices, just like the United States public schools beat children for speaking Hawaiian. Disney is an anti-Hawaiian, anti-indigenous death cult. Fuck Disney. Never give them any money. And not just for Hawaii. I mean, it's all cultures around the world. Pocahontas is a anti-Native American, just horrific, complete whitewashing of U.S. colonialism and genocide of Native Americans. Disgusting. Disney is the smiling, happy face that keeps the global greatest evil of colonialism and racism going. Disney was the beginning of U.S. primacy with the Mickey Mouse ears. And Disney and Moana, along with it, and all of its other shitty movies, should all go into the dustbin of history, and they should never make any money ever again. And some indigenous people making their own movies about their own people, like, I don't know, some like Reservation Dogs actually is, I feel like, an indigenous perspective. I'm just going to throw out some ideas. You know, and there's not very many Hawaiian movies because we're so subjugated. But once I get enough money through an anti-capitalist, if I can scrape together the funding for one, I'll put them together. But this is how the United States stops anything happening that's positive, is by controlling, by U.S. colonial capitalist, U.S. Washington, D.C., Wall Street interests controlling all the money that goes to make movies and TV shows. Right, and what that gives you the final say, that gives you the final cut, that gives you the imperial control to make sure only pro-U.S. or only narratives, only stories beneficial finally, and not harmful to the U.S. empire, global white supremacy, and global capitalism ever get heard at any kind of scale, right? So I hope Disney never makes a movie again. If you really want my take, I hope Hollywood just gets abolished. Part of me was like, I hope Hollywood just like incinerates and falls apart, and then something gets rebuilt from its ashes last year. But you know, that didn't happen. I hope Disney collapses and never makes a single movie ever again. I hope that like actual, there can still be movies. It just doesn't have. Why does it have to be billionaire blood covered fucking entities like that make it? You know, you could still have entertainment. You could still watch Battle of Lake Changjin. You know, there's lots of stuff that you can watch, but it's mostly not coming out of the U.S. or the West. Right? It's like guerrilla filmmaking. It's the same way. The only education that comes out of the United States is guerrilla Black, Indigenous, and people of color doing actual anti-colonial, anti-capitalist education. Right? All the universities are just bathing themselves in global empire and the bodies of Palestinians. Right? We know that now. But also the entire Western media and the film and entertainment industry is just soaked head to toe in blood and lies that make the blood happen. The lies that spill the blood. So, yeah, that's reality. Aloha. Anyways, so that's my video on Moana, and don't watch it. Don't give Disney money for it. Okay. The main thing is don't give Disney money for it. Don't promote it. And of course, like again, I'm saying that this is from my perspective. Somebody, I mean, I can't tell you what every person on the earth thinks or what every Hawaiian thinks. Other Hawaiians will disagree with me, and they can be wrong. That's fine. And if they're wrong for a good reason, I would love to hear that. But if they're wrong because they want to make money working for the United States corporations and military giant capitalist entities that are complicit in destroying the earth, that's not a good reason to disagree with me on that, right? Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson makes shit tons of money being friends with Bob Iger, being friends with the Saudi billionaires, and being friends with Israeli billionaires. So that's really nice for him personally. As a Pacific Islander, selling out. I mean, that's like Obama made lots of money writing The Audacity of Hope, right? Obama drank Flint water. He pretended to drink Flint water, let thousands of black children suffer poisoning, and then he went on to give $38 billion to Israel. So that's he did really good for himself. Obama's from Hawaii, by the way, and I hate that guy. I used to body surf at the same spot as him, right? So Obama is a black guy, and he's also from Pacific Island. What did he do for the Pacific Islands, and what did he do? What did he do for African people around the world? He did the worst. Arguably, he did the worst for the global black population that any U.S. president, anyone on the earth has ever done. Without Obama, the United States might not even exist today, and its empire might not even exist. But he allowed it to continue to exist and continue to bomb and sanction and destroy African countries. So again, we don't need representation. We don't need representation in empire. Representation is great. Representation that solidifies the hold of the greatest evil is I argue is not worth it. I prefer Hawaiians upset and enraged and ready to take on the mantle of the struggle against colonialism rather than relaxing into the luxurious arms of their oppressor. You know what I'm saying? Like, as Malcolm X said, the wolf is less dangerous than the fox in the woods, right? The Disney Mickey Mouse face is the fox, is the liberal fox's smile that Malcolm warned about. Like, Disney is the fox that pretends that it loves you, pretends that it cares. It's the happiest place. It's such a joyous place, right? Hawaii is the happiest place on earth for upper middle class white tourists with $10,000 to spare. It's the saddest place on earth. Like, Disneyland is the happiest place on earth while you're paying $300 a day to ride on rides and see your Disney princess. It's not the happiest place on earth for the Disney workers who are living in their rusty old cars just outside in tent cities, rationing cans of tuna fish. It's not the happiest place for the Disney workers. Hawaii is like a Disneyland, but literally built on a stolen culture on stolen land. It's not the happiest place for the Native Hawaiians who are rationing cans of tuna fish, living in collapsing apartments and tent cities, between fake smiling, doing bastardizations of their native culture or our native culture. Okay? So, and that's why, the Mickey Mouse, like the U.S. military recruiter, should be soaked in blood. The blood should be splattered all over it, just like it was on the to represent what the U.S. military recruiters actually are. Anyways, so that's it. That's it for that. If you'd like to support what we do here, don't forget you can give us direct support to Ko-Fi at ko-fi.com/silverspook, and that does help us to keep on doing this. If you don't like using Patreon or buying video games and stuff like that, you can give us direct support there. At patreon.com/Neofeud. You can also help us to keep on doing this work with ongoing support. When you do support us there, you do get access to behind the scenes of what we're working on. I just made a big Patreon update. Also here's I'm working on, speaking of steampunk, I'm working on these are like fake journal entries for one of the scientists in Neofeud too. On like, I was trying to make it look like notepad paper. I do art and I do animations. Also, no AI art, and everything I do is I paint it in Photoshop and animate it and I program it and I write the scripts. I write the story. And this is a bunch of this is one of the portraits I made for one of our patrons. At the highest level of Patreon, you have an optional Silver Spook paints your portrait. So I worked on this week. It was a Photoshop. It's a digital art Photoshop portrait of one of our patrons, and also you can support all of this activity that we do here against imperialism and colonialism in the Pacific, doing interviews with people to try to get this education out from across as many. This was Asia Pacific Islander Month, so I did as many as I could, and of course also doing direct land back and ecological restoration to again build the food sovereignty. I can't make solar panels or hydro turbines where I'm at, but we do whatever we can in Hawaii to restore the food sovereignty, environmental sustainability, and also preventing continued desertification that results in wildfires due to U.S. colonialism. Anyways, so if you want to support that, become a Patreon member. Also, you can help us out. At Neofeud, you can get games like Neofeud on Steam for which as I said, I created over 2.5 years as a programmer, artist, writer, musician, and half of the voice acting. And if you have a second to leave even a very short review, it does help us to get the game discovered in the Steam algorithm. You can also get Neofeud on itch.io for Windows and for Mac and for Linux. And this game is also a game that is on sale on the itch.io website. You can also help us out by getting games like if you really want to fight colonizers and the capitalists that are destroying the earth. Do you want to resist against a GNOCIDAL military? In Decolonators, you can do that. Decolonators is a game where you play indigenous people resisting colonialism and winning. Indigenous Star is another game about an empire arriving to eradicate and plunder, where you must heal the land and the people and restore, prevent erasure of your native language or culture to convert invaders before it's too late. And of course, you also have several other games. And Woman is a book by Holly, Holly's my partner, who was raised in right-wing evangelical Protestant Christianity. And this is not a retelling, but a story from Mary's perspective within the Bible that critiques that culture. And of course, you can follow Silverspook Games at octodon.social, Silverspook Games at mastodon.social on Mastodon, and you can follow Silverspook Guy on Twitter, Silverspook Guy, and you can also follow Silverspook Games, minus the E and Silver for the games-related stuff. And I'm most active on Twitter of all the social media sites. Well, we have social media sites on many platforms. Terminus Cyberstar, Terminus C is a low-poly cyberpunk RPG that I'm the content director, the lead writer for. And of course, you can follow Holly at the Tech Fairy. Holly is, of course, partner here, our great moderator here, for free. Free the Watermelon Place and Free Hawaii and more. Massive in Public, queer, married to myself, parent of two, and writer for the K-Nix Music and Variety Show. And also, happy LGBTQ month, happy Pride Month. And there's some pictures of us, also happy masking generally. And so you can also thank you to so don't forget to follow Holly for that. And thanks to all the people on the list for your continued Patreon patronage. Without the support, it is difficult for us to keep on doing the work that we try to do here as best as we can. So thanks for all of that. And without that, consider joining them if you have enjoyed the videos and streams and etc. Anyways, so until next time, you don't have to follow my instructions to the T, but if you want my opinion, you want what I think about Moana 2 and Moana, not because I think it's not entertaining, but what I think about where we are, especially with regards to Disney, especially giving them money and supporting them, and the cultural appropriation and all the things I've just said. That's my take on that, and you can do what you want with that. That is what I actually think. That is the actual Native Hawaiian perspective on Moana and Moana 2. Until next time, keep your mirror shades, policy, be excellent to each other, and have a good one. And we'll be back in the evening.